Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and it's time to talk about our boy, Reno Lone Ranger, one of the more polarizing cards in the game. If you go onto like the Hearthstone subreddit, go into Twitch chats and Twitter, there's either people that love him, hate him. It's pretty hard to find something in between. And I want to talk about, is he a problem in today's Hearthstone? Should he be changed? Is he too good? We're going to go over everything, at least that I think I could think of, talk about it, and I think I'm going to have a take on it that might surprise you, because yes, I actually do think he's a problem, but not so much him himself, but a symptom of a much larger issue in the game. And if you enjoy the content on the channel, if you like, I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below, give the video a like, so we're on the road to 83,000 subscribers. So if you're not familiar, you don't play a lot of Hearthstone, you're watching a take on a card that exists in the game, and you're, well, I don't know why you'd be watching, but regardless, Reno Lone Ranger is the first ever neutral hero card in Hearthstone, has a Highlander payoff where if your deck started, now it's started with no duplicates, so you can't really shut it off. You basically poof the entire board, the one side of your opponent's board, dormants, locations, death rattles, they're all gone forever. Can you be resurrected? It costs 9 mana, and then you get all these upgraded hero powers, which are significant, but rarely ever talked about as a big deal. And it is quite the popular card, seeing a lot of play on ladder, and it's also very contentious because that board clear effect is the most powerful board clear effect ever in Hearthstone. And then you restrict your opponent to one board space the next turn, which is pretty anti-fun. Not only do they lose their board, but they have like a turn of basically they can't really develop much. So this has led to countless Reddit memes of, what are you planning on queuing today, sir? I'll have a Reno, and I guess they're sick of the perfect Ziliax, Fire Ziliax, and Yogg. But you'll see a post about this all the time. I'm so tired of Reno. Like, you can just search there. There's tons of its stuff, and this Redditor here says, I don't like playing around Reno. I was really hoping that the nerfs to Warrior would hopefully decrease the frequency. I would love to see the stupid ass mistake of a card. Now every other game is Reno Priest or Reno Druid or Reno whatever this or that. I've told my friends that I will not play friendly matches against Reno, so they're just very sick of seeing it. We'll just start first by looking at the power level of the card, and we'll go from there. So first, Reno, if you look at the latest Vicious Syndicate Data Reaper report, there is not a single Highlander deck in tier 1. There's only like 2 that are considered to be like somewhat competitive top tier decks in Reno Warrior, Reno Hunter. Down below, you have Reno Druid, Reno Paladin, Reno Priest being tier 3, Reno Shaman being tier 4. None are power outliers, none are particularly strong. You look at the Hearthstone meta itself on H's replay, looking at legend ranks, they have Highlander Hunter as tier 1, and then after that, you have to go down to Highlander Warrior, Paladin, and the rest are like sub 50%. So like the Reno archetype itself, like all the decks, despite the fact they can't be countered anymore, are not particularly strong. They're good, they're competitive, but there's several decks that are outright better, and there is that to go for it. If you're taking a look at the popularity of the card, it is one of the most popular cards in Standard. You take a look at Legend, it's in 30% of decks, which is actually down from when the card went from 8 to 9 mana, and you could have it with like a duplicate deck where you cycle. There were so many decks abusing it, the cycle heavy decks, that it was around 33 to 35% of decks, and it's actually down. But still, 30% is a lot, meaning if you're playing at legend ranks almost 1 in 3 games, you're going to see a Reno. However, if you go down the ranks like Diamond through Legend, I think it's quite similar, actually 0.1 higher. But we look at that Bronze through Gold, it becomes less popular. It's down to like 25%. So the lower ranks, you actually see it a bit less. But the big thing with the card to me is if you take a look at the meta itself, you take a look at how Hearthstone works right now, it's a symptom of a bigger problem, where if you want to play a late game strategy, you want to play a controlling strategy, it's the only option really out there. And I don't buy the argument that it's only the realistic strategy because Reno destroys all other slow decks. I don't think any other slow decks have a chance to compete with the insane power level we have in today's game without a card like Reno. Like, without that complete reset, without that card that basically feels like I win the game against a lot of board-based decks, which pretty much does. We'll look at the stats for the card. It's not as insane as you might think, but it's very good. But it's kind of a symptom of, like, if they want slower decks to be meta, in Hearthstone, they need a card so utterly broken, so utterly ridiculous, like Reno, which he is. He's a completely broken card. I'll even agree with that on that take. But the way the game has evolved to the point where rogues are vomiting a billion stats, infinite value of things, like very early on, Handbuff Paladin can build stats of like a 2020 minion, like there and over, like not just one or two, just so many things. Zarini Priest taking an extra turn and vomiting the board. The early game strategies are so incredibly powerful, more broken than we have ever seen in Hearthstone before, where we had like a really large balance patch like a month ago. It helped. The agency has come back a tiny bit, but the game is still incredibly aggressive, incredibly powerful, where if you want any slow strategies I mentioned to compete, you need a card like Reno. You'd remove Reno from the equation of the game, you nerf him to 10 or make it not one-sided, you make him just a bit worse. These decks go from just playable, which they're at right now, just playable to complete garbage. Like that's the state we're at, unless we see significant nerfs to everything else, which I don't have faith in that happening. If we look at Reno itself, if you look at cards like the played win rate, you'd expect it to probably have the highest played win rate in standard, right? We're taking a look, we'll look at through legend or whatever. You'd expect it to be like the best, or right up there with the high win rate cards. You look at the played win rate, it's not there. It's not even there. You have like the Sifs, the Leroys, the Explosions, the Giant Insects, Inventor Booms, Aloni's, Zarimi, Riastraza. You got to scroll a significant amount down. Like he's all the way down, I believe, at like 60.7%. Like he's a good finisher. He can help you win, but he's not the I win the game card that, you know, these cards are explicitly played to murder your opponent typically, right? He's not at that level. He is good, but not there. And every other metric, like Mulligan win rate, nowhere up there. Drawn win rate, I don't believe he's anywhere up there. He's not an outlier in any real regard other than popularity. And to me, this is again a symptom of like, it's the only way to play late game decks. And I'll just harken back to a very popular card that saw something quite similar happen. Prince Renathal was another one of those cards that was one of the ways to actually play late game decks in Hearthstone, and it became very popular. It was in the similar range when it got nerfed, by the way, 30 to 35%. At one point, it was in 50% of decks. Then they nerfed Sire Denathrius because Denathrius let any deck just play Renathal and play a Greed Pile with it and win. Eventually, it might have happened with Astalor too. I don't know. We never really got to see that world. But regardless, this card got nerfed. And the thing I'll say is the most popular thing that people like to play in Hearthstone that I've noticed, at least as a content creator on Reddit, on all media types, is they just like playing late game decks. They like playing value decks. They like being able to do that. And the only way to do that right now in Hearthstone is a card like Reno. That is why, in my opinion, it is in so many decks. It is so popular, despite the fact it's not that powerful. It's not a power outlier. If you want to get rank 1 legend in Hearthstone, your better option is not Reno. It's another deck. But regardless, it is by far played more than any other card other than Zilliax because, well, Zilliax is broken. Plus, it's like 40 cards in one. So my take on Reno, I don't think he's a problem in the game so much right now. It's a necessary evil. It's a symptom of how power creep has evolved and how the power level of the game is, that if Blizzard wants people to actually be able to play a control strategy, a Reno Lone Ranger is necessary, or else if they eliminate it, the game just becomes a lot of scams, a lot of aggro, and you try and play a control strat, it's not gonna be able to compete because they don't have a card on the same like power level as everything else. So what would I do? Like, I think Reno is outright broken, ridiculous. I don't think it should restrict the board, but again, it's this necessary evil. So I would love that maybe, yeah, they nerf Reno, that they mass nerf everything else, right? That's not gonna happen. So I just don't know where to go from here, right? Like, we're in this position and we got another expansion possibly coming soon. How are they gonna have to push the power level with that? Can Reno compete with that, or does he get pushed aside by something somehow? It's it's a crazy one. So I totally understand the frustration surrounding this card. I get why it sucks to lose, get your board poofed and all that stuff. I get all of that. I even agree with almost all of it. But in today's game, the way it is, if you want late games to be viable, you need this automatic reset, basically time warp of a card for 9 mana, which does require a build around. Don't get me wrong. I barely even mentioned that. You have to run no duplicates, which as much as people want to pretend, it is a very big deal. But even then, it's just like, yeah, it's a pretty silly card. But at the end of the day, for the last time I'll say it, it's a symptom of a bigger problem. And I don't know how they get out of this power level problem that they see themselves in. Using a card like Reno to band-aid it, it's pretty rough, but that's kind of what I see it. But I also do think it might get Renethalled at one point because it's had its time. It's so popular because people want to play late game decks. We can't have that, right? So there we go. My take on Reno. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with him throughout the year. He does rotate next year. He didn't come out this year, so he's got 2 more expansions he's going to be around for. But overall, it's one of my favorite cards right now because it enables me to actually play a control deck, which is just so freaking hard to come by these days in Hearthstone. Anyways, let me know your hot takes about Reno down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.